The Creative Psychotherapist is the official podcast of the Creative Clinicians Corner, a practice-building resource for creative psychotherapists. TCP Podcast is the cast for creative, expressive, and experiential-focused psychotherapists curious to learn how to design, build, and scale a thriving private practice. Your host, Raina Lombardi, interviews successful therapists about the tools and strategies they have used to develop creative-focused practices. They also talk about the products, services, and side hustles they have developed using their knowledge and creativity to enhance their therapy practices, make a greater impact in their communities, and diversify their income streams. Welcome. Now here's your host, Raina Lombardi.
Thanks for listening to The Creative Psychotherapist. I'm your host, Raina Lombardi, and I'm super excited to have my next guest on the show today. Her name is Nicole Burgess, and she is a licensed marriage and family therapist and empowerment coach to introverted, sensitive, high-achieving professional women. She's also the host of the Soul-Filled Sisterhood podcast and the founder of the Self-Care Summit, Improve Your Bottom Line and Your Personal Life. Over the last 15 years, she's coached, guided, and collaborated with over 1,000 women. She helps them demote their inner critic, embrace their fears through action, and grow professionally without sacrificing their personal life. As a result, they are more productive at work, have more meaningful relationships, and no longer sacrifice their well-being for others. Thank you so much for being here, Nicole.
Thank you so much for having me on, Raina. I'm excited about our conversation.
I am too. I am super excited. And we're going to be talking today about moving through perfectionism and fears as a business owner, which I think is a really wonderful topic and that so many people can relate to. Over the years, just getting to know many, many therapists, I think a lot of us have perfectionistic tendencies. Not all, but a lot of us do, and that can really hamper our ability to take action in our business. So I'm excited to talk about this topic. So,
yes, I am too, and I totally agree.
Great. So if we start off, let's just kind of tackle, how would one even know that perfectionism is showing up in their business? How would they know if their perfectionism was impacting their abilities as a business owner? What would that look like? Or what have you seen it look like?
There's many things that it can look like. One, you think about offering a new type of service or maybe doing a certain type of social media post, and you're so worried about what other people may think or say, it stops you. You become a workaholic, that you don't have set end times for when you're working on your business or in your business. You kind of answer calls all the time, emails all the time. You really are worried so much about what other people think of who you are as a person, what they think of you as a business owner. You worry about screwing up, right? And so again, you just don't take any action whatsoever. You're afraid of trying something for fear of how I just can't do it as well as somebody else. Oh my gosh, so then I'm not going to do it at all. So all of those things go back to that perfectionism piece.
Mm-hmm. I could definitely see that. Yeah. I could see it too, like other people saying, well, there's already so many people doing that out there that there wouldn't be room for me to do it too. You're shaking your head, yes.
I used to say that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I used to say that often. It's like, well, I'm not doing anything unique. I'm working with anxiety and trauma. How's that unique, for the clinical side of it? But then for my coaching side, it is different. And it's recognizing everything you do is unique because you are coming from a unique lens. You have a different background and your voice is different. Honestly, like here, podcasting wise, your voice is truly different than everybody else's. And so it may resonate with some person and it may not resonate with another person. And that's totally okay. I always
Mhm.
like to say, if I'm not the person for you, there is someone else out there who is, and hope you find them. Or here's some referrals for you to go check them out.
Yeah,
Because that's
no,
just
it's
it.
great.
There's only one of you.
Yes, there is. There is. And
Yeah.
even though we all might have that, we've studied the same topics, our approach to helping people move through that themselves is going to be a little bit different. Um, so we all have a unique perspective
Mm-hmm.
to offer,
Exactly.
for sure. So, what would you say are some action steps that therapists could take to work on that and not allow those perfectionistic tendencies to limit their ability to grow or take action in ways that could be helpful or meaningful in their business?
One of the biggest things that I think everybody can benefit from is write down what those fears are, because that's all perfectionism is. It's a fear. And usually when we have fears, right, fear is all about that future thing that hasn't happened. And so it's come back to that present moment. And in the present moment, if I'm writing about, well, what are people going to think about this social media post that I'm going to put out there? What are people going to think about my voice and how I podcast? What are people going to think about I only work with teenagers or something? When you start to write those things down, one, your brain's not going to go in this lovely little loop it likes to try to do. And then two, you can start to look at like, what's the evidence that actually backs it up? Oftentimes there is zero evidence whatsoever that would even say, well, this is why you don't do this, or this. It's more of the fear thoughts. And just because we have a thought doesn't make it true.
That's true.
If you come from a background where you got criticized a lot, recognize that. It's like, is that really my voice saying that? Or is that someone else telling me in my own mind how I can't be good enough for this, or I need to take perfect action? It's all about taking that imperfect action, because you and I know every time we take an action step, one, we learn information about what's working and what's not. Two, we actually gain confidence in ourselves so that we
Mm-hmm.
can keep moving forward. And that keeps that momentum going. This is a business that you're running, it's not a hobby. So, in order for your business to be successful, you need to be in places of action versus hiding. Hiding just keeps you really small and it keeps you in that scarcity mindset.
Oh, yeah. I've never heard it framed in that way before, but it really makes so much sense. And I can just see that in my own personal development over the years. I definitely tried to hide and didn't want to be seen. You know, Therapy is easy because you're in the room with one other person and it's private. You're not seen. But
Mm-hmm.
once you decide, well, I'm going to have a therapy practice, then you have to become seen. Otherwise, people don't know that your business exists. And that piece
Mm-hmm.
can feel really difficult. Um, in your experience coaching other women business owners, how would you say that impacts their like ability to market?
Well, it's huge, right? So perfectionism gets in the way. Another fear is that imposter syndrome. All of those are nothing more than fear-based, like that self-doubt that comes up, that loud inner critic. Everything under that umbrella is fear-based. So if you're not marketing yourself, which again, then there's the mindset of, oh, if I'm marketing, that means I'm salesy, which means I'm sleazy. No, marketing means you're of service and you're promoting your what products, services that you offer people to help them make transformations. So we really work on that mindset stuff in coaching, and then create some goals that you're taking small action steps. So one thing that I know with the clients that I work with, and I always chuckle because these high achievers are like, yes, I want to go do this thing, but they want to go from A to Z. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, you
That's
can
me.
resonate with that.
I
Yeah.
just want to already be done there, get there.
Right. And I resonate with it too. So I work with these kind of women. But it's looking at, it's like, well, A to Z is beautiful, but we need to map out some smaller steps so you can see yourself succeed at doing these things and gaining the skills and the confidence you need in order to get to Z. So for marketing, for example, let's say you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can really market. When I first started, and I moved from California to Indiana, when I started to market my practice, I first sent out like letters to various doctors and other folks that I knew I could collaborate with. That was like my level one, where I didn't have to do face-to-face stuff, but I could get myself out there because I also had to maintain my energy level. Then I started to go to networking meetings. Now, I know there's usually a hubbub about going to networking, but I do that as a therapist. I do that as a coach. Remember, it's time limited. This is not forever. And I also love Zoom meetings with meeting new people. So I've met them from LinkedIn, from Facebook, and setting up meetings. Like, I don't have to go anywhere, but I get to meet somebody. All of those things are the building blocks for you to start making collaborations, the networking. Those are your referral sources and you to them. All of that is marketing. All of that comes back to your business. So start with one thing that's like your least anxiety provoking thing you can do, and just watch yourself start to grow. It's like, oh, that wasn't so bad. That wasn't so bad. Think about what you tell your clients. You have them take action steps. So it's like, looking, well, if I tell them to do that, let me sit in their seat and go, oh, I can do this too.
Yeah, that is so true. And I feel like I tell that to the people that I supervise. Like, if you're asking your clients to do that, then you have to be willing to be vulnerable and do something that makes you feel uncomfortable as well. And it is challenging, and putting yourself out there and going to a networking event, those are challenging things.
But
But
remember, it's time limited. Those discomfort moments, they're just moments.
mhm. And then you can build on them, like you're saying, like kind of the systematic desensitization piece, right? Once you start doing it, you feel a little more comfortable each time, and it
Mhm.
becomes less frightening.
Florida Art Therapy Services is a proud sponsor of the TCP podcast. They offer art therapy for individuals and groups, as well as qualified supervision services and high-quality, experiential-driven continuing education for art therapists, mental health counselors, and clinical social workers. Visit www.floridaarttherapyservices.com for more information. And if you're interested in becoming a sponsor of the Creative Psychotherapist podcast, we have copper, silver, and gold options. So visit www.creativeclinicianscorner.com/podcast for more information.
And that second step, right? So again, it is that desensitization. It's the cognitive behavioral stuff we can use with one another, the solution focused stuff. The second thing I would talk about then is also make sure you're giving yourself space to be mindful, like doing meditation. So if you started, let's say you started to market on, I don't know, you did the letters to the doctors. Pause for a moment, maybe that next morning or in that evening, and just check in with yourself. Like, how was that for you to do that? Is there another place that is calling you to actually market there? And when you're checking in with yourself, you might start to feel there's more ease and flow if I go down this direction over here versus I need to do what traditional way of marketing. It's like traditional may not be for you, and that's okay. There's a lot of untraditional ways that brings business.
That's true. I think we're fortunate that we're in this new era of the online world.
Mm-hmm.
Really opens up so many different avenues for marketing and getting your message out there
Mm-hmm.
in a way that is different from years before.
Yep. Yeah, I know I've had conversations with other colleagues and how it used to be more of like, Facebook or Instagram. That used to be such a taboo area for therapists to promote themselves or to market. And the reality is it's not. As long as your clients aren't, commenting and following you, you need a policy for that. That is a way for you to reach potential people to bring into your business. You can advertise there, all that stuff. It's just a different way of doing it versus the yellow pages. That's it.
Right, right. And it certainly helps you to be found just in the general search if your business is in multiple places versus
Yes.
just having a website and that is it alone. And I think a lot of people are a little bit fearful about using social media.
Mm-hmm.
Um, have you encountered that with different business owners that aren't therapists as well?
Some of them seem a little more confident because they have taken like maybe courses or they know somebody who is specifically in that arena. So part of that is if that's not in your skill set, you may need to take a course. You may need to hire somebody to help out with that. What I like to say is like just start with doing some posting here and there for yourself just to get your feet wet. If you want to amplify it and you're like, that is just not my zone of genius, fine. Then search for somebody where you can hire it out, or you may have a virtual assistant that can help do some of the posting. And again, maybe you don't do specific ads on it yet, and that's okay too. There's just a
Hmm.
lot of ways you can begin and keep facing those fears that are just false thoughts, basically.
Yeah, for sure. Um, and I feel like there's possibly some ways we can use the fear to actually help us in the direction that we're going.
Mm-hmm.
Can we speak a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I think again, instead of making like your fear the enemy, sometimes I like to say, when I'm working with little kids and the clinical side of it, it's like, oh, you can flick it off. It's like a bug on your shoulder, right? You can flick the fear off. But if it feels like it's the angel kind of devil concept on your shoulders, recognize that. It's like, oh, okay. So there's something to this. Let me get curious. Like, where in my body am I feeling this? What is it? What's really coming up? And as we more or less befriend the fear, we can really see there's no true threat here. It's a perception thing. And then I can be really gentle with myself. I can be kind to myself of just like, oh, thank you, brain, for doing what you think you need to do. And I'm going to take this small action step so that you don't get so loud the next time when I do something else. And
Mhm.
it's just recognizing it versus like, oh, I can't ever have fear. We're always going to have a level of fear when we're stepping outside our comfort zone. That's normal. It's just what you choose to
Yes.
do with it. You can procrastinate, you can totally shut down, or take small little baby steps and watch your progress grow.
Right, which that's what we want to see people do. We want to see them grow
Mm-hmm.
and achieve their goals and fully realize what they imagine their business could be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I, gosh, what you said really resonated with me, and that this idea of when you first start, you're going to feel fearful, and then that will subside. But as you continue to grow in your business, the fear will resurface again
Yeah.
over and over again. It keeps coming up. Um, and I almost feel like it could be like the beacon or the lighthouse, you know, that metaphor, like it helps you to see that you're moving in the right direction.
Beautiful analogy right there. Yeah, because becomes that guiding force in a sense. It's like, oh, if I'm not feeling some sort of fear, then you might be stagnant. You might be content. And if you're like, if you've reached a certain income level, that's one way to tell too, and you've kind of plateaued and you're wanting to do more with your business, is like, okay, well, you've got to step outside that zone again and see what you can do to change that.
I totally feel like that happened to me with going into podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. I like knew I wanted to do something else, and I wasn't sure, and I was really used to and really comfortable, not being very visible.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that I had to work through as I opened my practice and started with the marketing stuff too. I didn't really want to go to networking meetings. I like all of what you said really connected. And You know, I did the letter writing to
Mm-hmm.
doctors and other collaborators in town. I did all those things too. And I got to a point where I was like, okay, the business is running really well. I need a change.
Mm-hmm.
I I like need to step it up. And now I feel like, okay, so I've stepped it up with the podcasting. And so I'm more comfortable putting my voice out there, but not necessarily my image. Like I've been
That's the
using the
next
same
step.
biopic. Yes, it is. It is. I've been using the same bio picture forever. Like I, I, when I think about, well, I should do a video, and then I go, I don't, like, like I can't. I can, but I definitely feel that level of fear. And I know that that's like the next point that I need to go in. Any
Mm-hmm.
advice?
Well, so think about this, right? So when you started your business, you had fear. So what did you do to work through that? When you started your podcasting, you had fear. So what did you do to work through that? It's using some of those same skills and tools that you did for those two things to add videos. So I have I have many videos out there that are really bad because I've done them a few years ago, didn't know what I was doing, very scripted. I would read through those things, didn't necessarily have very much animation on my face. But now when I do them, there's more times I will still have a script because I totally have a tendency to go off tangent, go off talk about whatever. And I'm like, oh yeah, what was I talking about? Crap, I got to bring it back to this and I got to do a call to action. So there are certain times I still don't have it, quote, perfected. And I'm not going for perfection. I'm going for me gaining confidence and putting myself out there because think about it. When you meet somebody, oftentimes you're Googling them, trying to figure out, oh, do I want to work with them? Do I not? Having some of that video gives you more like trust and comfort in that person, then you're going to have a conversation with them. But there's something to connect with. So
Yeah.
remember, you're going to have like crappy first, second, third, fourth, fifth drafts. It's all good. I actually, on my coaching website, I have kind of a sequence that is set up for once somebody actually does an appointment, and then it sends them to a different link and it says thank you. And I had somebody on
Oh.
my email list who wrote me back and said, hey, I think you've kind of got your thank you video as a blooper. And I'm like, what? That's weird. So I went back out there and my edited version didn't save. The unedited version got out there. Now, it wasn't anything too bad, wasn't cussing anybody out or anything, but I laughed. I was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for actually letting me know that. I didn't worry about it, right? I didn't be like, oh my gosh, I'm the worst business person ever. My coaching business is going to fail. Nobody's ever going to work with me. No, it's like, okay, I made a mistake. That person didn't schedule anything. I'm okay with that. If that
Mhm.
turned them off, then they're not my ideal client.
Mhm.
But to have somebody just give you that reflection and go correct it, okay, there you go. But that's one way to get people to see you when you're doing more kind of voice behind the scenes or you don't have any
Mhm.
video on your website. I'd say one video on your website can make a big difference for how people find you and connect with you.
Really? That's
Yeah.
good to
Well,
know.
and think about it, right? So Google and YouTube are now under the same thing. And so even though YouTube cannot um, pull the words out of the video, you can still write captions and things like that, which helps with SEO. And so that helps you be more searchable and findable in that. So using both Google and YouTube can really help your website because it's all about you can have a pretty website, but if you have no traffic out there, it does you no good.
Right. No, it's true. It's true. That's really great advice. And I'll let you know as soon as I get my videos going.
There you go. And remember, your clients aren't looking for perfection. They want a level of professionalism. What they really want to know is you can help them with their problems. And
Mm,
if you can convey that clearly, you're in the right, you're going in the right direction.
yeah. Yeah. We're all going to make mistakes in our business and have flub ups and miss schedules.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I, So many things. I feel like there's not a week where I don't have to make some adjustment somewhere. Uh, Honestly, there's always
Mhm.
something when you have so many things in operation at the same time. um, it's easy to have a misstep. It's much easier to have a misstep now with having multiple businesses going at the same time versus
Mhm.
when I was just solo practicing on my
Yep.
own. That was easy.
Yeah. Well, and again, all of it comes back then to systems. So as you're growing and as you're shifting, having some systems in place can really help with that and reduce overwhelm. And remember, perfectionism is a thief. It really does keep you very limited and in that scarcity mindset. When you're willing to make mistakes, you're also willing to show your humanness, which is also what will help clients connect with you. And because you're not expecting your clients to walk in and be perfect, they're coming you with, some stuff, right? I call it kind of the messy things, and they want to figure out how to do it differently. And
Yeah.
that's what it is, owning a business. It's like, okay, I've got some of these skills, I'm going to learn, or I'm going to ask for help. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. That's how
Oh
you
no.
learn.
Yeah, definitely. Gosh, I think if we're in the therapy business and we're not comfortable asking for help, we really have to do some self-examination.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And you and I both know, I'm going to kind of jump for you for a second, but you and I both know not only does perfectionism and being seen with marketing, money issues come up, and the fear of not knowing that, talking about it again, where is that coming from? Is there perfectionism holding you back from taking this step for asking for help or hiring that part out? If you're like, I don't even want to know how to do all the ins and outs, I just want to know, am I making it or not? And they can explain kind of high level to me. Great. Totally fine.
Yeah, multiple ways of going about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could see how the perfectionism could really impact um, somebody's money mindset too.
Mm-hmm.
What, you had pulled in on the mindset piece and used that term scarcity mindset,
Mm-hmm.
and how that really does connect with the financial
Oh,
piece of
yeah.
things. Because then the fear of taking action becomes around that financial return.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then that plays into like, well, that's my livelihood.
Yep. But think about it, if energetically you're constricting into that perfectionism, right? It's a very constricted space to be. Why would anybody be drawn to you? Right? Because it's put out there in the world that way. It's that frequency, it's that energy level. And when you're coming from a place of more abundance and openness and grateful, I've got more clients, or I'm meeting new people, it's helping me with my business, it's helping me with my skills. Now you're a much higher elevated emotion and energy. And so you're more expansive. So you're in just a whole different framework. You're grateful, you are joyful. It doesn't mean there's not challenging times, but you're
Oh
able
yeah.
to bounce back quicker than being stuck in that place of stuckness, which is where perfection wants to keep you. It's like, nope, we're going to play really small. Thank you very much.
Yes, it really, really does. I think too, with the past few months with COVID coming on for people, I know for you, you're pretty much everything is online for your
Mm-hmm.
business. Um, but like where I'm at, we have a brick and mortar
Mm-hmm.
practice, and there's several therapists that work with me. And that really impacted, like clients didn't want to transition to telehealth, and
Mm-hmm.
um, really it was essential to pivot. Okay, so what are we going to do? We have to
Mm-hmm.
be flexible here. We can't resist what reality is creating for us right now. Either flex or close up. And I have seen some people say, I just closed, I just don't want to deal with it anymore, which
Mm-hmm.
really was surprising to me.
It's a
um,
choice.
yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
um, but I I wonder if there was a mindset thing there, right? That like would lead somebody to that decision. Um,
Well, think about that, right? With perfectionism, that's one piece I totally forgot. We go to the all or nothing thinking. It's a very black, white, all, nothing, no gray, no flexibility. It's rigid thinking, right? We call that cognitive distortion. And when we are able to flex, move back and forth and pivot, like you're saying, and evolve your business based upon what's environmentally going on, you have more of the growth mindset, as Carol DeWick would say, versus the fixed mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And that, again, perfectionism can't exist in that
Mm-hmm.
because you're able to move and flex with it versus like, nope, it can only be this way. That's not true.
Yeah. So that I would agree. And I think that's the challenge in helping people to move more into the growth piece of things. What do you think are some things that people could do if they're struggling with that? Um, what would you recommend if somebody came to you and said, you know what, I'm like feeling really stuck and I want to grow, but I'm feeling stuck and paralyzed by it?
So the first thing I love to do, again, I go back to these mindful things. I'm like, ooh, let's get out of your head. Because again, most of my clients are very heady people. I'm like, let's drop into your body. And they're like, what? So I'm like, yeah, you're going to get uncomfortable, but let's ratchet that discomfort up just a little bit. And breathe into the space in your body where you're even feeling the stuckness. And then asking in that space, let's say it's your stomach and it feels like it's just really tight. Is there a color? Is there a shape? Is there a word? Is there a song? Is there a memory? Anything like that that comes up when you drop down into your stomach area and you feel that stuckness. And you sit with that area of your body and just allow yourself to go there. You're not judging it. You're not overthinking it. There's no right or wrong. But oftentimes we want to just hurry up and get through, right? The stuckness. We don't want to feel that momentary discomfort because, again, humanness is we're going to circle the pain. We don't actually want to dive into it. Yet that's where transformation can happen, is when we give ourselves permission to go into that and then come out and get curious versus making it an enemy. Get really curious, like, what is it really trying to tell you? So that stuckness may be like, oh, I remember when I was a kid, I tried something new. And man, I got my hand swatted for trying something new, or I got told that was a stupid idea. And so then I didn't ever want to do something like that again. I just want to kind of conform to what the quote rules are. It's like the rules are what you're going to make it. It's your business. Right. And so
Yeah.
when we get curious in those places in our body and start to write down, like, well, what else have you felt, or what are some other times in your life where you've really felt stuck? And then what did you do to move through it? Right. Sometimes it's also self-forgiveness, self-compassion that kicks in. Like I even forgive myself for having the thought that I should not, quote, the shoulds that
The
love to get
shoulds.
in with perfectionism, right? You're shitting all over yourself. It's
Yes.
like, I shouldn't even be thinking this. I shouldn't even feel this way. And somehow I ought to know. It's like, well, I even forgive myself for thinking I ought to know all the answers right now.
That's so good, Nicole. So good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's taken me a while to even use that because I can be really harsh with myself too. But it's like, man, is that powerful? And you're just like, I just forgive that part that just all of a sudden decided to swap me over the head for no reason. But it's like, okay, we're going to move through that.
Yeah. Yeah. We can't stay in that place of beating ourselves up. It's
Mm-mm.
not helpful at all. But everything that you said was just so good about connecting to that space within where that emotion is being tickled and triggered, and
Mm-hmm.
really sticking in with it and questioning it and getting curious about what it has to teach us. And it's just so good.
And you work with creatives. And so part of it is then get out the artwork, get out the magazines, get out the crayons. I love the pastels, right? And the oils, get those little beauties out and then create. So I will have that when I've worked with clients in person and I'm like, hand them paper and they've got choices of how to put it out there on paper, right? All of a sudden you take away the verbal stuff because again, it gets in the way. And you just
Yes.
allow it to come forth from your body. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's what that is. Ooh, look at that color. We're like, ooh, then what happens if we go a little deeper with this and we get more curious with it and watch it evolve and shift? sometimes we need to be in that stuckness for something to really come forth, not, rush through it. But other times it's just blasted stuckness that you're just like, all right, enough of that. You're called procrastination now.
Yeah, that's so true. There's like a fine line
Mhm.
between the two. And yeah, I always tell clients, we have to be in that place for however long we need to be until we're ready to move forward. And only you can determine that for yourself. I can't determine that for you.
Mhm.
I'll sit here in this place as long as you need me to,
Uh-huh.
but no change is going to happen if we continue to sit here.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. And if the stuckness is nothing more than the fear, again, recognize that it all starts with the awareness piece, recognizing you're in the feeling of stuckness, you're in those fears, and then you can start to take the action steps to move through the time limited emotion where you are.
I like that. Time limited. Doesn't last forever. It's temporary. Feelings aren't facts, right? All those DBT skills. Um,
Use them
so,
in your business building.
right. But, that's the thing. Even therapists, we do this to help other people. But sometimes it's really hard for us to swallow our own medicine.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
That's why having community, right? Having this podcast for one place, you can go listen to the different conversations, go, oh, that resonates. Oh, I can do that behind the scenes. The other thing is you may need to reach out to other clinicians, other colleagues in your area. Or for me, I'm like, I got them kind of globally, which I love. That's part of what podcasting has provided, right? And you reach out to folks that you trust and be like, okay, I'm in this space, just need somebody to kind of, run this by. Are you open to doing that? And then again, that helps to shift it. You're like, dude, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, thank you. That's all I needed. Yeah.
Yeah, it is so true. I know I have found that to be invaluable. And I guess I didn't disclose when we first were doing the introductions, but Nicole and I met because we're in a mastermind group together about podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
And that was even doing that, that was like a fear too, like a risk.
Mm-hmm.
I had a small community of people that I would meet with and collaborate with in person, but it wasn't a financial investment.
Mm-hmm.
But having that financial investment of creating that community of people that are in it together, that are doing the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
whether that be like going into the podcasting world or starting your own practice, but connecting with people that are actually doing that work or have done that work, it is, I'm at a loss for words at how helpful
Mm-hmm.
it is, because you have you have access to so many people that are so wise about
Mm-hmm.
the process because they've been experimenting and figuring it out too.
Yep.
Um,
And
yeah.
you just hit a key point. Whether we do coaching, whether we do masterminds, I just literally had a conversation earlier today for my podcast about personal development, but this is all what this is investing in yourself. And then you're not having to reinvent the wheel or take you 5 years to learn a skill. And when you invest in that, all this, it's rapid growth in a lot of ways because you are tapping into all these other resources who've been there, done that, or find some shortcuts to be able to do it or processes that can work better. And it just is an acceleration, which is a beautiful thing versus struggling. I used to love to piecemeal stuff together and struggle along the way. And there's still some things I do that with, but for the most part anymore, I'm like, nope, who can I buy their time from that I can do this? And I'm not doing this for 5 more months. Yeah.
Yeah, I would totally agree. When I first started, I did a lot of research on my own and I had time.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot more time. And so it made sense from a financial place for me to save that money just in case something didn't work out.
Yep.
To be like, okay, I don't know how to do this, but somebody on YouTube does. Somebody out there has made a book about this
Mm-hmm.
and I can read it. Um, And so that worked. But then as you grow, your time becomes so much more valuable because you have less of it.
Yep.
And so that's when investing, it really makes a lot more sense.
And remember, many of the investments you put in your business are a write-off at tax time.
That's so true. Yeah,
2 for
that's
1.
incredible. So I'm excited about that benefit too. Anything that you can write off is a good thing. But that means you have to be doing a good job tracking all of that information, which hopefully people have a good system for that.
Yes, exactly.
Well, is there anything else that you think would be beneficial for listeners to hear from you, from your perspective? Because this is kind of the area where you live all the time, that we didn't talk about today.
I just really want to go back and emphasize you don't need to struggle. If you've got a lot of self-doubt, if perfectionism really is holding you back, invest in yourself. Like Rena was saying, if you've got some money in the budget for it, do it. There's so often when this was a couple years back when I was really getting more into the coaching, I had a couple calls and they're like, oh, I've been thinking about doing this business for over a year. And as we got going, they're like, oh, I don't want to make the investment in what I was charging at the time. Totally fine. Yet I was like, so how much longer are you going to wait to actually invest in you for your business, for your own relationships? Because we know if we're cranky in our business, we're going to be cranky in all relationships, right? Because you're stressed out. Versus do that short-term investment now so you can see the progress and get some skills, and then you feel more relaxed and calm because you know more of what you need to do and how to do it without having to do it all on your own. So really investing, whether it's with therapy, if you need to work through some old stuff, or in coaching to really build your business and go forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing
Yeah.
that. I know too that you have a really great freebie for listeners if they wanted to. Nicole has a freebie. It's a 10 signs that you might be a perfectionist quiz. Is it a quiz?
It's more of like, kind of like, oh, what do I want to say? I had a quiz and I've changed it more into just like an email that says, here's just some 10 signs you might be. And so you can read through these little paragraphs and see if you're like, oh, yes, yes, yes. Oh my gosh. Yep. And yep. And yep.
So if it comes up, then you can say, okay, now I can't hide and be in denial about it anymore. I can
Yes.
raise my consciousness and take action to move forward so that it's not limiting. So that can be found at her website, which is NicoleBurgessCoaching.com/perfectionist, which I'll put it all in the show notes too. But thank you so much for being here today, Nicole. And I hope that listeners found as much value in what you had to say as I did.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I totally enjoyed this.
Me too. Me too.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Creative Psychotherapist. If you like what you heard, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. For show notes, downloads, and additional resources, head over to the website at www.creativeclinicianscorner.com.